Welcome to Soccer Morning. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Here we go, Soccer Morning live on a Tuesday. Backheel.com on the air, or so I'm told. I don't actually hit the button to make me go on the air. I just talk into the microphone and send the audio signal down the line, and then it gets processed somewhere, I think in the brain of Trevor Hayward, and then it's spat out into the internet world, and you can partake in it. Today is a big show, good show for you lined up. Jonathan Tannenwald, the goalkeeper on Twitter, manfromphilly.com, will join us in just a bit. We'll go over the Philadelphia Union, his hometown team. Well, the team he covers in Philadelphia. Philly's not actually his hometown, but I'm sure he would call himself a Philadelphian at this point. Hi, Jonathan. We will talk about the Union with Jonathan. Perhaps we'll talk about TV as well. Jonathan is our man with his finger on the pulse of the MLS TV situation. I've got questions about national TV. I've got questions about local TV. Maybe he can help me fix my TV at home. I don't know. Many things possible with Jonathan Tannenwald coming up. We will also take your phone calls. As per usual, opportunity for you to get in on many different things, including the Crest, because we didn't really take calls here on the Crest, right, yesterday? This is what happens to me, okay? Just to pull back the curtain a little bit on the way Soccer Morning goes Monday through Friday. As most of you know, as I'm sure all of you know, we do this show from 9 to 10 plus a.m. Eastern time every day. Then I take a short break, usually 45 minutes or so, get myself together, put together a rundown, and do 2 hours on Sirius XM FC Channel 85, which you should listen to if you are not already. Sometimes news will break between shows, in the middle of shows, during the first show, and then I'll talk about it on the second show, or it'll break on the second show, and I missed it on the first show because it wasn't out yet, and then the next day I'll have no remembrance, no actual clue which show I talked about which thing on, and we have to go back and I have to take a look and make sure that I'm not covering the same ground. So, I don't think we took calls on the Crest. If we did, my apologies. We'll do that again. We'll take calls on anything today. Including Copa America Centenario times, which are now in stone and out. Jonathan Tannenwald also with that information. Here we go. With the news, running it down before John joins us in a couple of minutes. CONCACAF Champions League tonight, an opportunity for DC United and the LA Galaxy to turn over, well, not to turn over deficit, except in the case of DC United. The LA Galaxy are 0-0. Let's start. DC United hosting Querétaro. They're down 2-0 after that first leg. That's 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 2. This is interesting, if only because you wonder how upset the United players are going to be after they had cash and their phones stolen out of the locker room in Querétaro. Now, imagine that's not the players, it's not the Mexican players' fault, but it is funny. Nobody likes to get their phones stolen, said Ben Olsen. It's a huge part of all of our lives. It's like someone stole your dog. It's a really good quote from Ben Olsen. That has no bearing on the game, but I thought I'd throw it in there. Very, very questionable whether DC United can turn this over, but they will have a chance at home. The LA Galaxy, meanwhile, have traveled to Torreon, where that series is tied 0-0 with Santos Laguna. Second leg matchup, 10 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 2. Obviously, an away goal could be the difference here. If they can draw 1-1, they will go through. They have their full complement of attacking weapons, and meanwhile, Santos is not playing very well. So perhaps there's a chance here for the LA Galaxy. Arsenal's Alex let me try that one more time. It's a lot of A's. Arsenal's Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain will miss 6 to 8 weeks with a knee injury that does not require surgery. That's according to manager Arsene Wenger. Oxlade-Chamberlain has sustained the injury in a clash with Javier Mascherano in the first half of Arsenal's 2-0 defeat to Barcelona in the Champions League last week. In addition to the Oxlade-Chamberlain injury news, Wenger has decided to criticize the critics, calling Arsenal's critics too emotional. I'm never surprised by the criticism that comes. That's part of the media today. The opinions are always a bit excessive and emotional, but we have to deal with that. I don't complain about that. What we want to do is transform the negatives around us into positives and create even more solidarity. Let's not go overboard. We do not play to avoid being relegated. We play to fight for the premiership, and that's why we have to put the criticism into the right place. This obviously comes in the aftermath of that weak performance at Old Trafford on the weekend, where they lost to a weakened Manchester United side 3-2, a loss that significantly damaged their title hopes as Leicester City remains in first place. Organizers have announced the kickoff times for the Copa America Centenario games this summer. I mentioned that. USA kicks off against Colombia in their opener at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday, June 3rd. That game's in Santa Clara, so that's 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Pacific time, local time. The second day of the tournament, actually, that Saturday, June 4th, features 3 games. I think it's the only day with 3 games: 5 p.m., 7:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. So that's fun. Let me see what those games are because I didn't write them down. Costa Rica, Paraguay in Orlando at 5. Haiti and Peru in Seattle at 7:30, and Brazil, Ecuador, and Pasadena at 10 o'clock. I imagine that'll be a full house there to see Brazil play. Former PSG man Ezekiel Lavezzi says he turned down Inter Milan, Manchester United, and Chelsea to make his move to Hebei China Fortune in the Chinese Super League. Believe him if you want to. I don't know. The 30-year-old Argentinian said he wanted to join the project in China. He's fascinated by Chinese culture. He also admitted that moving to China probably brings his international career to an end. He played 48 times for Argentina. European games today. There's actually quite a few games, including 5 in England. Bournemouth, Southampton, Villa, Everton, Leicester City, and West Brom, with Leicester having a chance to extend their lead in the Premier League title race, to 5 points, at least temporarily, if they can beat West Brom, as you might expect them to. Norwich and Chelsea, and Sunderland versus Crystal Palace. You also have 2 games in Spain. Atletico Madrid versus Real Sociedad. Las Palmas versus Getafe. And in Germany, Ingolstadt takes on Cologne, and Hanover takes on Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga. All right, there we go. Let's take a break. We will come back. We will talk to our man, Jonathan Tannenwald from Philly.com. The goalkeeper returns when we come back. Soccer Morning, Backheel.com.
Welcome to Soccer Morning. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
We're back on Soccer Morning, Tuesday. Joining us now via Skype, our good friend Jonathan Tannenwald, who you can find on Twitter at The Goalkeeper. He is a must-follow ahead of the MLS season. He covers the Union and MLS and many other soccer topics at Philly.com, in addition to his other duties, because he's a well-rounded individual. Hi, John.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine. I'm running this poll this morning that I'm having a lot of fun with.
Okay. Okay. Is it really important? Is it important stuff?
Well, it is which of these will be the official cause of the end of the world.
Okay. Okay. Sounds really important.
Yes, it's a poll that's on my Twitter feed. You can go and vote in it. The choices, and they are the only choices, are bad design and lack of pro rel.
Which one will cause the end of the world? Lack of promotion and relegation, or bad design? Obviously, a reference to not only our system here in the United States as to our operation of the soccer leagues, but also that crest that dropped yesterday. And maybe we'll talk about the crest, John. I'd be curious to know what you make of the response. But we've got actual soccer. Actually, no, I got a question before you. Okay. Crest related.
All right.
Did you receive a box?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm in the mainstream media. Why would I? I don't care. I don't care about getting the stuff like that, but I'm in the mainstream media, so I did not expect to receive a box.
Okay. What does that mean exactly? Wait, you're in the mainstream media. What does that mean?
Well, didn't they send the box to fans primarily and bloggers?
Yes, but I know
influencers.
I know Andrew Doss got one.
Well, they said the Times got one. But.
Yeah. Well, okay. I guess because it's the Times, of course. I mean, I'm not. Trevor got one.
Well, he's an influencer.
I didn't get one. I have a room full. You have a room full of scarves. I've seen you do video where you have a room full of scarves. I have a room full of scarves. I would happily display said scarf.
That means you've made it in the mainstream media. Congratulations.
I made something. Maybe they didn't like some of the things I said. That could happen. I don't know. I hope not. Anyway, it's neither here nor there whether I received the scarf or saw the crest before it was actually unveiled. It is unveiled now. We'll come to it. I want to talk about your local team first. The Philadelphia Union, and you've heard me, you've heard me put them in a box before as sort of lower middle class MLS team. That's not a bad thing necessarily, and we've seen teams in that sort of area compete well in this league and even win titles in this league. It wasn't that long ago the Colorado Rapids won a title, and maybe the league's changed a lot, but there's supposed to be hope every new season. Give me where hope sits right now with Ernie Stewart on the job, with Jim Curtin still there, and with whatever the Union are working with in 2016.
Give me a minute. There's not a lot. I mean, look, I'm very fond of Ernie Stewart. I think that in time, he has the ability and the intelligence to build this organization into an organization of the caliber of Portland.
Okay.
That's got to be the goal. Or Columbus is another good example.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Those are exactly the kind of clubs I'm talking about, right? I mean,
if they can do it, there's no reason why Philadelphia can't.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm sure you'd be the first one to point this out when people start to. Despite the fact that I've labeled Philadelphia that kind of club, despite the fact that they do sort of slot in terms of maybe resources alongside a Columbus and a Portland. They are in a much larger market. Not that market means everything in soccer, John, but they are in a much larger market than either one of those teams and should be able to maximize that opportunity to be a big club. I don't know, is it fair to judge the Union by their inability to be a big club? Or
sure.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Well, it's fair to judge the Union by their inability, that if they are not going to have institutionally the amount of wealth of other clubs, that they need to make up for that with intelligence that they historically haven't had. And it's the same thing that's killed Chicago, time and again in recent years. The Union and the Fire are similar in so many ways. I suppose at this point, the biggest difference between the two is that there's not a former MLS GM with various motivations trying to build an NASL team in Center City, Philadelphia.
I imagine I wonder, but I wonder if that's an idea somebody might have. Not with the resume.
I think there are people in the NASL who'd love to have it. If they want me on their back, chasing after their financial records, then that might be their fault.
Oh, come on, John. Don't. Okay, whatever. Don't try to scare them off. It makes everything more interesting for us if things like that happen. Anyway, there is one team in Philadelphia, or one team in the Philadelphia market. Coming back. In fact, I since you did bring up the Fire, I mentioned this on my satellite show yesterday and didn't have a chance to do it here. I went to Chicago this past weekend. Not for any particular reason, just sort of on a lark. And I did find myself with some free time. So I went into the city. I wasn't staying in the city. I was staying near the airport. And I went into the city. I went to the Globe. You saw me tweet about the Globe, John.
I did, yes. It's a great place.
Very nice place. Wasn't really jumping on Saturday. It was pretty bad soccer across the board. All the good games were on Sunday. But it still, I enjoyed it. Had a couple beers. Then I made my way over to this place called the Fire Pitch. I can't remember the name of the bank that sponsors it, but it's it's a soccer
facility.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I have. Yes.
Okay. Have you?
I went there the last time I was there.
Okay. They've got this right now. There's a bubble up, and it's got so it's indoor. It's protected from the elements. Fields that they are renting out to local soccer clubs. In fact, there's also some flag football that was happening when I was there. I've been told that they're going to take it down. It's going to be outdoor during the summer, the spring and summer months, and it should be great. It's going to come right up to the window of the restaurant that they've got there. And it's clear that Chicago is making a very conscious effort, John, to reach into parts of, when I say Chicago, the Fire are taking big steps to reach into parts of Chicago that they might not have a reach now that they're out in Bridgeview. They have a nice stadium, but it's not centrally located. It's not what people in Chicago would consider Chicago by any stretch. So they feel the need to be on the north side, which is, again, pretty far removed from where their stadium is. They also have a program called Pub to Pitch, where people can go to places like the Globe and get on a bus and get taken over to the stadium to watch the Fire. Philly do anything like that?
No, not well. There's one bar in town that at least two, maybe one or two that have done them over the years. I don't know if they still
right, but
do.
because of the club or because of the fans
because of the fans.
Right, not at the.
No, the team does not organize that stuff, and they've got a new. It's funny. They've got a new business guy in charge of that side of the operation now, named Tim McDermott, who came over from the 76ers. And as bad as they are, their marketing campaign and their social media strategy are brilliant. And if he can do some of that for the union, it will pay a lot of dividends. And even I, who do not spend a lot of time or energy rooting for that team, hope that he is successful in that.
Mm. Well, it just occurs to me, and I'm learning. I'm not going to pretend like I know how every team markets themselves. I certainly don't. I've seen Chicago a little bit. Spent the day there, talked to some people, et cetera, et cetera.
It's a really, really great place to be.
But in terms of whether or not the Fire can be successful in the city of Chicago, again, if they were completely successful, there'd be no room for Peter Wilt to walk in and think he can start an ASL team that would be successful, playing at Soldier Field, which obviously the Fire used to be there. So it's interesting to watch them make these attempts, and I have no idea if they're going to be completely successful. I do know that having the Fire brand all over that part of the north side is probably good for them on some level. It just makes me wonder if a team like Philadelphia, in just as competitive a sports market, because of the loyalty that the Eagles and the Phillies and the Flyers engender, the 76ers to a lesser extent these days, I guess, I don't know, whether or not they are not copying, because I don't know, but have some sort of notion of how to grab the rest of Philadelphia beyond the Sons of Ben and the hardcore soccer fans.
Well, it's funny you say that, because in the previous administration, they did not get the hardcore soccer fan. They got the Sons of Ben and all the suburban families, but they did not get the hardcore soccer fan.
Well, there you go. That's the question about how to do that. Now, again, and I said this to people in Chicago. You can have Pub to Pitch. You can market your team at this restaurant and this facility on the north side. You can have community outreach all over the place. You can have players doing appearances. You can send you have kids doing camps and everything else. But
sense of butt coming.
If you don't win games, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
So if the Philadelphia Union want to grab attention in Philly, they got to win games. And as you said, maybe there's not a whole lot. Can Union fans at least look at this team and say we're going in the right direction? I would think that Ernie Stewart's presence alone would be enough to make me feel better. But when you look at the roster, can you say I see where they're trying to go?
Oh yeah, I definitely see where they're trying to go. And the funny thing is, they're going dramatically away from the sort of young and American strategy they had under the previous regime. And they've gone out, their big signings this year have all been international, or almost all of them. The big two are Roland Alberg and Ilsinho, the midfielders who are going to line up on either side of Tranquilo Barnetta. And that plus Vincent Nogueira and Maurice Adu behind them, is going to be pretty good. And the question is going to be whether CJ Sapong can finish all the chances they create.
Yeah, here's my question.
He can score a lot of goals this year.
Well, okay, I like CJ. He obviously, he made something of a mark in his first year in Kansas City. Although he's been blown out of the water in terms of rookie goal scoring by what we saw Kyle Larin do last year. I think he can be good, but I don't know that he's MLS elite at this point.
No,
so
I don't think he is either. But I think we'll find out come the summer. If he gets on a hot streak in the first half of the season, even if he is, and look, the comparison to a degree is going to be to Jack McInerney. It's not entirely fair, but Jack McInerney, when that one, 6 or 7 month stretch where he scored like 12 goals or something like that and ended up on the Gold Cup team. Remember that?
Yes.
He scored a lot of goals, and I sort of called him the goal scorer by default.
Yeah.
CJ Sapong's a better player than that. I'm not saying he is of a level of David Accam, or certainly not Bradley Wright Phillips, obviously, but pick various,
okay,
mid-upper level strikers in Major League Soccer. I'm not saying CJ Sapong is there, but I certainly think that he has a chance. He has the ability to finish all of these chances that are going to be created.
Okay. Well, certainly time will tell. And I don't want to say that CJ Sapong's a bad player. Certainly not. There needs to be chances. Now they did trade away Christian Maidana, so that there's going to be. You believe there's going to be chances created by the group that they've got now on the same sort of level as Maidana? Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
the problem is that Maidana and Barnetta were doing the same thing.
Okay. I see. All right. It's just that Maidana was he was so successful in chance creation that it was sort of surprising even with Barnetta in the team to see him flipped to Houston. Now, just real quickly, if we're going to judge CJ Sapong, and he as you said, he has the ability to finish the chances. But when you look at let's just take the Eastern Conference here, because the midfield strong, okay, and whether or not Ilsinho is going to be disciplined enough to play in as many games as the Union want is a question that's coming out of the preseason, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is.
You obviously got a back line. You got Andre Blake now being asked to carry the load as the goalkeeper. At least there's some semblance of consistency at the goalkeeper position. But if you look at the Eastern Conference, really Philly is. I mean, CJ Sapong is, and what Philadelphia has it forward. If you want to go to a little bit of a bigger picture, it's not better than Columbus. It's not better than Montreal. It's not better than New England. It's not better than New York. It's not better than Red Bulls. It's not better than Toronto. It's not better than Orlando. It might be better than the Fire, maybe, unless you throw in David Accam. And so they're. I mean, I'm not saying CJ Sapong can't succeed, John, but when you look at where they fit into an Eastern Conference as they try to battle for a playoff spot, 5th or 6th place.
Oh, I don't think they're making the playoffs this year.
Okay.
And I know your prediction bonanza show is coming up one of these days, and if,
Friday.
I don't know anybody who's going to put them in the playoffs.
No, probably not. But this is MLS, and things can change very quickly, and we can see some surprises. And I guess that's what I was trying to get to is if there is a chance, maybe why is there a chance? Because CJ Sapong's on the verge of a breakout, because Barnetta and these guys are going to create chances, because is there enough in the back line, John? Is there enough depth in this team?
Sapong's going to have to carry them until the summer transfer window if they have any hope of doing anything. Then they have to go out and get a backup to Maurice Adu and a top caliber striker. And they might have to go out and get a left back also. Striker and left back are the two positions that have just bedeviled this organization from their beginning, almost. Certainly left back since they traded Jordan Harvey. They haven't had one since then. And striker is the big money position, and they've never spent.
Right.
The highest profile striker they ever bought was Carlos Ruiz.
Is Herbers going to be asked to actually play and score goals?
I think for a while he will be. Again, I don't know what this team will do in the summer. But I think for the time being, Herbert is going to be Sapong's backup. I think that's how things are going to start.
Yeah.
And from there, we'll see.
Okay. I'm just, I was trying to look up the roster. I ended up on Wikipedia, which who knows how accurate that is.
Here's the thing that I have in the back of my mind. They start the season in Dallas, which might just be one of the single worst teams in Major League Soccer they could possibly go up against.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going to have people who don't pay attention to the Union or to soccer, including a great many of my colleagues in my office, who watch this game to say, all right, it's the Union's first game of the season. We have to pay some modicum of attention and get it in the paper. And they get thumped.
Yeah, but this is what you say. You say this is, this is this. you say something like, this is the Eagles playing the Patriots on opening day. You don't expect them to win, right? Right?
What I'm only allowed to say, when I am asked by my colleagues, are they going to win or lose? I'm allowed a 2-second answer. I'm not allowed a justification.
Okay. Oh, come on. All right. I'm looking. Okay, I'm looking at this roster, and I asked you about the defending, and I don't know what's going to happen. The opening day's on Sunday. They're probably not going to get anybody in between now and then. But they've got two rookies in this team, Rosenberry and Yarrow, Taylor Washington, Ken Tribbett, Ray Gaddis. We know
Tribbett might start.
Okay, Tribbett,
and he's got some USL experience. He was originally going to go to Bethlehem, and they liked him so much that they signed him to a senior contract.
Okay, so what does this back line look like? Who's in the middle?
Tribbett. I'm guessing Tribbett and Anderson Conceicao.
Okay.
Tribbett, the right-sided center back. Conceicao, the left-sided center back.
So we basically know nothing about the Philadelphia Union center backs in an MLS context. We have nothing to go on. We're gonna have
pretty much.
Okay, we're gonna find out on opening day.
Because Maurice Adu's not playing center back this year.
Right, exactly. And okay. Wow. Goodness gracious, they're going to be fun to watch, regardless of how they do, John. I think, and I root for Ernie Stewart, and I root for Jim Curtin. I mean, I put Jim Curtin in my hot seat only because he's not Ernie's guy necessarily. Ernie didn't get to hire his own coach, and that's always a tricky situation. What are the prospects that we might see a change? Again, not wishing Jim Curtin gets fired, but if things don't go well, it's not going to take much justification for Ernie to say, well, he's not my guy. I need somebody who's my guy.
Well, some of your most famous listeners in the Philadelphia area are not Jim Curtin fans. So if they make a lot of noise, I don't know whether they're still Union season ticket holders or not, but some of the people who you and I know well who call into the show often, I know are not Jim Curtin fans. So
okay,
it's. I have said for a long time now, if Jim Curtin had the financial resources that the Red Bulls and the Whitecaps had, if he would be as good a coach as Carl Robinson and Jesse Marsh, and that if you flip that and put Jesse Marsh or Carl Robinson into Jim Curtin's seat with the amount of resources that the Union historically had, it would not be held in high regard as they are now.
Yeah, but just down the road, maybe it's a different thing, and certainly there's legacy and some sort of semblance of how to do this built into the organization. But just down the road, Ben Olsen is getting it done.
Is he?
Well, he turned what was a questionable roster into at least a playoff team, and therefore something resembling an MLS Cup contender. I mean, ultimately, DC United never has enough to get over the hump, but they're competitive. They finished first in the East in 2014, John.
But last year, I see them to recall the Red Bulls handling them fairly straightforwardly in the playoffs.
No, this is true. Again.
And that the carryover from that 2014 team and the allocation money that they got out of that and then went to the Champions League and all these other things. And remember that what we're watching in the Champions League is delayed by a year or whatever it is from whatever those teams were, qualifying off their MLS results.
That's a good point, though. Yeah, and DC got some extra help coming out of 2013 because that was such a disastrous year. So, in terms of finishing last and whatever benefit they got from that. And obviously they had won the U.S. Open Cup, so they got the Champions League allocation money despite finishing last. So okay, fine. I guess probably Philadelphia's been working with less than DC, if only because like DC, they're not spending on the DP side.
Right. And this is an organization that has blown everything up except the head coach and Sebastian Letou and Maurice Edu, for the most part. And Latou's not going to be a starter now, finally.
Well, that is. I mean, at this point, considering his age, look, I know the guy has been a work rate marvel for most of his career, and that's really what's driven his success. But it was pretty clear last year that if they're going to rely on Sebastian Letou, they're never going to get back to the playoffs and be the team they want to be.
And they have a front office that is not going to sign players because they're popular with the fans. They're going to sign players or let them go because of their talent.
Well, that's the right way to go. I mean, obviously, that's the right way to go. And despite teams in Philadelphia being probably more populous than most sports franchises, John, you need somebody who's removed from that culture in order to make the decisions that are going to best.
And I'll tell you what, they aren't so much anymore. And the populism is changing as the demographics of this place change. Mm-hmm. And what the Flyers and the Phillies are doing, who have, the Phillies of the last, 7, 8, 9, 10 years under their previous general managers, they've got a new one now. And the Flyers, who, the Phillies were holding on to their old guys for too long. And the Flyers under, any number of general managers going back decades before the one they have now, were trying to bring back the Broad Street Bullies of the 70s. Neither of them are doing that anymore. They're all in on their young prospects. Many of them are pretty good.
Okay.
John, and we'll see what in how that translates to the Union is we will see what, now that they've got Bethlehem Steel up there, we will see just how good the players up there become and how many of them we see in Philadelphia by the end of the year.
Okay. And look, Philly is doing some interesting things. I mean, I don't know how Ernie views, the academy situation, the high school, the things that the Union had built under Sakevich, but we shall see if they pay off any dividends. And I hope Ernie, and I imagine that this is the case, is going to get a pretty long leash in fixing the problems. Now, I do have John O'Connell, on Twitter, who's suggesting that Richie Marquez is going to get the start at center back instead.
He might.
Okay.
He might.
Yeah.
They have got more than two starting caliber center backs, which they have not always had.
They're not going to throw Yarrow to the Wolves then?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, look, we've seen obviously Matt Miazga is an exceptional case, and he came out of their academy up in New York rather than coming out of college. But Yarrow's got a lot of faith from a lot of people. I'm not saying he's a surefire all-star type player down the line, but there is a lot of expectations for him.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And I think he will get his playing time eventually. I just don't think he's going to get it right out of the gate.
Okay. John, let's one of the other things that you cover very well is the television situation when it comes to Major League Soccer. And as we enter a new season, year number 2 of MLS's national television deal, obviously blowing the doors off the thing on opening day.
I'm very excited about that.
With every team playing on Sunday, obviously, again, 3 games across those 3 national partners: ESPN, Fox Sports, and Univision. Just give me as we come into year 2, give me a sense of how you think they think things are going, both from a league level and a broadcaster level.
Look, I think they're trying to do more things this year. They're always trying to do things to raise the ratings. The people at ESPN and Fox and Univision care deeply about Major League Soccer's success. And I know I've offended a lot of people by saying that. But they do. And they're trying things to have more attractive matchups at better times and find the sweet spot as to, how these things are going to go. I don't know what kind of a rating the Portland-Columbus game is going to draw. I do think the Seattle-Kansas City game will draw well. And I got to tell you, on Sunday, the thing I'm most excited about is having this free show on Major League Soccer's website and ESPN3 and Fox Sports Go that's jumping around all the games that are getting played in the afternoon. I think that could be a smashing success. I'm looking at games in the early season I think that potentially the entity that's going to come out of this best in the early season is Unimas. Because they got some big games right out of the gate. They've got New England against the Red Bulls. They've got on March 18th, they've got New York City against Orlando at Yankee Stadium on a Friday night at 7 o'clock. That could do a huge number. I'm looking at Sunday, April 10th, a quadruple header of games on ESPN and Fox, including a U.S. women's game that's going to be here in Chester. I'm looking at, where's that rivalry weekend? Oh, right. Saturday, May 21st. I'm looking at 4 games on Fox over the air this year, which I'm very excited about. I did not expect there to be games on over-the-air television, maybe even at all in this contract, much less after just 1 year. May 21st, Fox over the air is having a doubleheader of the FA Cup final and the first Hudson River Derby of the year.
That could be big. That could absolutely be big.
I've got the whole national TV schedule up at philly.com/MLS TV.
There you go. That's pretty simple. 5 letters, all you need. Yeah. I need to take a look at that. I'm not always good at being aware of when things are coming up, and certainly, again, you think that it might take a number of years. The hardcore are going to find the games. We always know that, but the hardcore are not enough to make a dent in the ratings, John. It's going to take casual fans.
They don't like to hear that.
It's going to take. It's not even that it takes more than the hardcore. It takes hardcore out of market, right? It takes. This still is very much a local league. You care about your team and nobody else, or you care about your team and maybe your most hated rival, but then are you watching your rival's games if your team's not playing? That's an open question that MLS has to figure out. And they've got a guy in charge who is involved in the most successful national TV product in the history of sports. How did they get there? I mean, I'm not sure you don't have the answers, or they'd have hired you by now. But how does
I'm not sure I want to work for them.
Okay, well, how does MLS figure out a way to make their league more appealing to a national audience rather than just to the local fans?
To me, it's pretty simple. Put your biggest teams and your biggest players on national television as much as possible, and if people in Columbus complain, too bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this league right now is the most vocal fans, the most ardent fans, the people who really do make the league go and are deserving of credit for being passionate are the fans that are going to complain the most when you put NYCFC and the Red Bulls and the Galaxy and Seattle on TV all the time.
And wait until next year when Atlanta comes in, when the LAFC comes in the year after that.
Okay. So, I mean, for a long time, I had to, had to listen. I did listen to somebody we both know out in Salt Lake City consistently complain about the lack of RSL on national television. And
some of the people who were complaining about the lack of RSL on national television used to work at MLS headquarters, so they know the truth.
Of course they do, and I understand their advocacy for their team. I mean, ultimately that's the job. But was there a point? Is there a point to not now? Obviously, RSL has changed, but at the time, it was RSL plays the best soccer in MLS. They play attractive ball on the ground soccer. They buck the perception that MLS is only fast and athletic and Route 1 all the time, or too direct, or whatever the soccer snobs, whatever criticism they want to level at MLS. Is there a benefit to putting teams on television who play better soccer?
I don't think people want to watch Columbus and Dallas. And boy, did we all try last year to convince them that it was worth doing, but they just wouldn't.
So that's a truth right now.
And Dallas is going to be the really fascinating one this year to me. Columbus, at least, people have heard of some of the players by now a little more than they had before. And they made the final and they hosted the final.
Yeah.
Dallas is an incredibly fun team to watch. They've got a lot of really great young talent. Will people watch them? And that's a huge market, by the way.
Yeah, look, let's be clear about this. People should watch them. People
in Dallas should watch them, which is a huge... And you know who else should watch them? And they might actually be watching them now. The staff of the Dallas Morning News. which used to not even bother putting them in the paper. I'm thrilled they hired John Arnold to cover them.
By the way, you just mentioned that. John Arnold, who we both know very well and has been covering soccer, and he's CONCACAF John on BBC 5 Live's World Football Phone-In. Last time I checked, I haven't listened in a while, John. He's been, as you said, he's been hired by the Dallas Morning News, so that is a step in the right direction. And I'll come to local issues, but yeah, let's be clear that while we are saying that it's probably best for MLS to continue to put on the biggest markets and the biggest stars, people absolutely should watch Dallas. I mean, this should not be an issue. But this is not the NFL, and this isn't major college football where it almost doesn't matter who you put on television. People are going to watch. When MLS is not to that point yet. And maybe on some level it's sort of unfortunate that Dallas, I mean, it's good for them and they're successful, and I'm not questioning their recipe, John, but maybe it's bad for the league that they're not involved in some gigantic big-name DP.
Probably is bad for the rest of the league, but I don't know how else to say this than how I'm going to, so I'm just going to say it. If Fabian Castillo was American, he'd be a superstar. Sure. And he ought to be, and never mind the whole complexity about how the American players play. He ought to be a superstar, full stop, now in MLS.
He should
and
be.
He's not.
No. Well, I mean, look, we could poke holes in the state of the American soccer fan base forever. We could certainly, poke holes in what MLS has going on, and we're not here to denigrate necessarily, just sort of pointing out some of the troubles when it comes to television. Before I need to go and start taking some phone calls.
Throw this at you real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Toronto FC is on American TV 5 times this year, and Montreal is on TV 3 times this year after not being on TV much the last couple seasons at all. Because the production costs up there are so high. We're gonna find out whether the American fans are really gonna watch Sebastian Giovinco and Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore finally, which they did not necessarily last year, and we're gonna find out whether they watch Didier Drogba.
We will find that out. That'll be interesting to watch. All right, the situation with the national television, obviously we'll watch that this year. We hope and expect, and just to be clear, MLS did see some growth over the previous ratings from 2014.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was like 7 to 10% on ESPN, and obviously Fox had a big jump over NBCSN, and Unimas had a big jump over its previous years of games. And I expect if they're all up again this year, at least 7 to 10%. I take a 10% growth rate every year on a regular basis, and I think it'll be a lot more than that. Because Unimas has some big games, and they've got ESPN lined up a bunch of its games around the Euros to back onto, broadcast with the Euros to do twin bills and stuff like that. I think that'll jump the ratings quite a bit. It may lead to a drop in 2017 because you're not going to have some of those tie-ins that you do this year, and I think we might have to remember that. Yeah. But I think there's room for a pretty substantial jump on ESPN this year. We'll see.
Okay, I pushed this longer than I planned to. This is fine. It's all good, fascinating stuff. But I got callers I want to get to. So a couple of things. First, the local television situation. I just lamented the fact that MLS is a local league. But as long as it's going to be a local league, you want the local television deals to be strong. You want the performance of the ratings to be relatively strong. Any particular interesting stories out there right now? You and I, before we came on, I mentioned Columbus. I think they've drastically improved their television situation from what I can tell. For those who don't know,
Columbus's deal is with the local Time Warner cable sports channel, which is only available if you have Time Warner cable, which not everybody in Columbus does.
Right.
To a significant degree. And people were hemming and hawing about that for good reason.
Yeah, and it's a geographical situation. Right. It's not like you have a choice necessarily. You have to sign up with the cable company that has the contract with whatever your locality is. Go ahead.
And they broke through this year and got all of their games, in addition to being on that Time Warner channel, simulcast on various over-the-air stations around the market, depending on what week it is. They did very well. I'm a little worried that not every New York City FC game is going to be televised this year.
That's interesting.
I've heard that right now there's a couple of them that are not lined up for broadcast. I've heard they will be when the time comes.
I know a guy. Let me ask that guy. I'll ask that guy.
Yeah.
We'll find out about that. I mean, that maybe is that a danger of partnering and being involved with the Yankees? And yes, because obviously the Yankees are going to take precedence on that. Is that an issue there with scheduling?
The Yankees have enough other stations they can. They'll get it done. I've heard they'll be taken care of.
Okay.
I just don't know where. And I'd still rather probably be on the YES Network than Sportsnet because at least the Yankees can. Well, I mean, the Mets technically can land on other stations too, but I think they'll be fine. To my knowledge, there are 3 teams in MLS that have not yet announced their local TV deals for the year. They are San Jose, which usually ends up on their Comcast Sportsnet affiliate. They are Los Angeles, which has this huge deal with Time Warner station out there, and I don't know why they haven't announced it yet because they're usually one of the first to do so. And Houston, which I'm getting a little worried about.
Huh.
Because I believe they've got a Root Sports station down there now.
Uh-huh.
They used to be on the Comcast Sportsnet affiliate that went bankrupt. And that caused a lot of headaches for the Astros and the Dynamo and a lot of other teams. So I'm a little worried about them, but the rest I'm not.
Okay. One club, and I only remember this because it's local, and I've heard you talk about it before. One club that always takes forever is DC United. They got their deal done
this year.
Okay, just give me some details there.
But they are back in their old home, News Channel 8, which they were on when I was growing up in D.C.
Man, News Channel 8.
And they're also going to have a number of games on the ABC affiliate locally.
That's good. That's obviously a good thing. News Channel.
And that isn't, by the way, the ABC affiliate down there has a long history of embracing soccer. And I think they'll do very well with that.
Okay, so we'll see with that. For anybody who doesn't know, News Channel 8 that's technically a cable channel, right?
Right, it's a cable local news channel, which I've always been amazed has stayed in business.
I know,
having grown up down there.
And look, I don't want to hate on anybody doing good work over at News Channel 8 and covering local stories, but I've always felt like it's about 2 steps beyond public access sometimes.
Oh yeah,
but
sure.
good for DC United getting their deal done. All right, last thing here. We're talking about television, and that's the traditional place for people to go watch their sports. We know that television revenue still drives so much, and will have a large role to play in MLS and the growth of the league going forward. And you and I have talked about the pressure put on by the broadcast partners onto MLS to spend their money. But MLS also drives a lot of revenue through their streaming platform, and the reports are that they had 60% growth in MLS Live. What does that mean, John?
I have no idea, and I'd sure like to know.
Okay.
It means nothing until you tell me 60% of what.
This is true, and that's not something they're revealing yet. Or
correct?
They don't want to. I mean, it's obviously.
I've asked them plenty of times over the years, and we'll keep asking.
Okay. All right. It's great. And I don't know that Chris Schlosser listens to this show. I don't think he's ever.
I think he does.
Okay. Hi, Chris. Can we get some numbers? It's okay. Look.
I got a television event for you. Copa America is going to be a television event.
Yes. Yes, it is.
The only person it's going to cause a headache to is me having to file a story on Deadline in Santa Clara on the opening night at midnight Eastern time when that game ends.
Yeah, well, we didn't really get a chance to talk about the schedule.
9:30 start for the 9:30 Eastern time start for the U.S. Colombia game to kick the tournament off.
Yes,
a headache
on a Friday night, right? Yep. On a Friday night. So I mean, we'll see what kind of business television wise that game does, but certainly we expect that tournament to be overall a success, John.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yes.
So we anxiously watch.
If they happen to invite Gianni Infantino over for a couple of games, I think he might like what he sees.
Okay, there we go. Fox broadcasting Copa America Centenario. Another referendum on Fox's coverage, Don. I think that if we're being fair to Fox, they've progressed pretty mightily since
I think they've done very well.
Yeah,
and I think that I don't know how this has happened, if it's just been by coincidence or what, but the soccer people have been sort of left on their own to do what they want to do. And as long as that remains the case, then I think that they'll be in pretty good shape. And I know a lot of the people behind the scenes there, as a number of us in the media industry do. I'll give you the names of 4 people. I'll give you a lot. Okay, fine. People who do very good work there: Shaw Brown, Jeff Strauss, and Ben Grossman, who produce the games either in studio or from the truck, and that is for U.S. games, MLS games, Women's World Cup, a lot of it. I hope they're listening. And David Neal and David Nathanson, who are the sort of the top executive guys running the soccer operation over there. And as long as they get left to their own devices And as long as Rob Stone stays in that host chair, I think they'll be just fine.
So there you go. Jonathan Tannenwald, Philly.com, at the goalkeeper on Twitter. Let me just say, 2016 is going to be an incredibly fascinating year, and John is one of the must-follows, must-reads out there, covering everything from, again, the Union to national television to the business side of the game and beyond. John, thank you very much for the time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Of course.
All right, there goes John Tannenwald. A little bit longer than normal, but that's good. We got a lot of information squeezed in there. Now we have some time to talk to you. Soccer Morning phone calls coming up right now. Stay where you are.
Welcome to Soccer Morning. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
All right, phone lines are open, 646-832-3909. I've lost the jacket. It got a little warm in here. There's lights and stuff. I'm sweating. It's almost like I'm playing soccer, but not really because I'm not getting any exercise at all. 646-832-3909. What is on the top of your mind this morning when it comes to... Is it DC United getting robbed in Mexico? Is it the Champions League tonight in CONCACAF? Because we've obviously got a couple of situations where the MLS team is up against it. DC United down 2 goals. Now, the situation for the Galaxy is a little different in that maybe we can imagine them overcoming not scoring in their first leg and needing a goal on the road in order to go through. I mean, although you can look, they could play to another goalless draw, go 120 minutes, and go to penalty kicks. And wouldn't that be fun? Not really, considering that game's at 10 o'clock and I'll be up really late. I'd like to get sleep some point. Yeah. So whatever happens in Torreon, I would like LA and Santos to promise me they're going to let me get some sleep tonight. Because here's my problem. As much as I've said on this show, this competition doesn't matter, and I really do believe that. Until other countries are competitive in this tournament, it doesn't matter. I still watch. It's still soccer on a Tuesday night. When what else do I got going on? I mean, I got work to do. I got a kid to watch. I got stuff. I got stuff going on. But it's still soccer on a Tuesday. You can't pass up soccer on a Tuesday. I think it's a law. Like, I don't think it matters what the game is or where it's coming from. If you find it, if you're aware of it, you have to watch it. Otherwise, you turn in your soccer fan card. Yeah, the rest of the world is going to be focused on politics tonight. Like, everybody else is going to be going nuts over Super Tuesday, which is happening right now. In fact, my kid is here in the Soccer Morning studio because the schools are closed because the Virginia primary is happening, which I'm not registered with a party, so I'm not voting today. But that's why my kid is off. I mean, sitting here, I'm watching him eat a pickle right now. So people are going to be talking about politics, especially those of us who have to either take our kids to work or take a day off in order to watch our children. 646-832-3909. That's the phone number here at Soccer Morning, which you can find at backheel.com. We had some website issues. Those are sorted out. You obviously can go to iTunes to get the show. Look for Soccer Morning and type that in. That's nice. That's a nice thing to do. It's the background. What is it called? The image. It's like an album image or something. For some reason, it's got my picture on it. I didn't ask for that, by the way. I just want to make it clear. I didn't ask for my picture to be on there, but there it is. You can find us on iTunes, yeah, and give us a rating and a review and stuff like that. We got MLS in the Champions League tonight. Well, let's stick in that area with our man Aaron up in Jersey. What's up, Aaron?
Hey, how you doing? Great shows the last 2 days. Great people.
Good guests, right? Less Jason, more guests. That's the magic formula, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. I read all their articles, so it's great. So hopefully, we can get lucky with the Sounders and they can pull some crazy magic out of a hat and score a bunch of goals tonight, and the Galaxy can somehow get through. Just so we can, at least, like you said, try to make this competition a little more relevant. Because I do think you have to get a U.S. team to the finals on a regular basis just to even, get local U.S. MLS town interest going. Interest in their own team playing in the Champions League. Forget about the rest of MLS.
Well, okay, let me ask you something, Aaron, because I've thought about this before. Okay, and look, this is something that's true of Mexico to a slightly lesser extent. I mean, we know the powers in Mexico, and they're not always great. Sometimes, so obviously right now, Guadalajara is not good. Occasionally, Club America drops off. We've seen a rotation. Sometimes Cruz Azul is good. Sometimes they're bad. It goes back and forth. But it's still not to the level that is MLS parity, right? So we get some somewhat consistent performance. I mean, the Sounders, I guess, have been in this competition a number of times in the last couple of years. The Galaxy are usually in it. But for the most part, you get a turnover, right? You don't have how do I say this? What I mean is
you don't have the power
there's
you do in traditional European soccer, where you have these big 4, 5, 6 teams there all the time.
Well,
and then when they drop off, it feels weird. Is that what you're really saying?
Well, what I'm speaking directly to the fan bases of those clubs. People who then become accustomed to this being part of their annual routine and therefore help prop up the tournament. You know what I mean? So the Galaxy, again, probably the exception. Maybe the Sounders are the exception. But if you have, next year we're going to have Columbus, obviously the Timbers, the Red Bulls, and who won the U.S. Open Cup? Sporting Kansas City? Did they win?
Sporting Kansas City, yeah.
So we're going to have a new set of teams, and again, it's an issue of whether or not the lack of consistent performance and participation means that no fan base comes to think of this as part of their soccer birthright or what their club deserves every year, and then will support it because, hey, we're competitive every. You know what I'm saying? If we don't develop that sort of pattern, I wonder if we ever can get people interested.
I mean, I think one of the challenges with this tournament is the way we structure in our hemisphere. Just don't have natural continuity of following a team through a season. I mean, it's not the same analogy, but imagine if there was the World Basketball Finals and they were played in September every year, after the NBA season. I mean, it just feels so, disjointed to the normal support that you have for a team. And to be honest, I think CONCACAF, if they wanted to, and I think they will, because I think there's going to be a fairly radical change, like half the people are in jail and the other half are new in the next few years, that these are the kind of things that you can really kind of work on. I mean, you can schedule shift some logical things so that you can put maybe your quarterfinals and beyond, a lot more relevant, to a lot more relevant period of the season.
Well,
and in some ways, almost branded as a separate part of the whole season, which can make more money.
Okay, and I think you're right. And I think that's probably going to happen, and it's probably a good thing in the end. But the question I immediately have, Aaron, is whether or not it's the best for everybody, or if we're talking about, again, like for me, there's a legitimate question in terms of the viability, the long-term viability, and the validity of the competition. There's a question to be asked of whether or not the competition should be moved and manipulated to benefit MLS, because that's going to circle around and benefit the tournament in the end, or whether or not MLS should adjust to the tournament.
I mean, MLS doesn't adjust to anybody.
I know that.
So, I mean, I think, if we're honest, and so I think if we're going to talk the adjustment phases, maybe phase one of adjustment is the tournament adjusts to MLS for 4 or 5 years and kind of builds the base of MLS support. And let's be honest, that probably gives the space needed to clean up some of CONCACAF's weirdness, especially in the Caribbean, and I would say also allow the investment that's clearly going to go in from FIFA and CONCACAF into Central America, like it always should have had, to kind of boost their profile up. So it's almost like you're going to do this in stages, right? You're not going to do this. This isn't going to be like the creation of UEFA with all the powers, ready to rock and roll all on day one. I mean, this is going to be, I think, phases of improvement. Maybe the first 5 years is getting MLS on board. The next 5 years is getting, kind of Central America on board, and then maybe the last 5 years is, getting the whole thing, rolling and sold to, other regions. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, that's the only way this thing is ever going to get, going. I think that's the only way anything in CONCACAF could work, because everything's just too disjointed.
Do you get the sense, though, that CONCACAF is in part because of the lack of leadership and certainly of trustworthy leadership, that CONCACAF doesn't have the stomach for the process? That this is the whole thing about calling it the Champions League back in 2008. They changed the format. They're aping what Europe does. They're calling it the Champions League. It's like they wanted to grab onto the coattails of the UEFA Champions League and just ride and not actually do the work.
Well, yeah. I mean, I agree. But this goes back to, you had a great point yesterday talking about, Gelati's leadership. And I know he probably bought himself, the rest of his life by, cutting his, the Medici grand bargain behind the scenes. But I look at that and I just don't think that's where we need to be in the future, because, where were these guys the last 15 years or 25 years as, CONCACAF was basically running, Corleone family-like enterprise. I mean, it just, to me, if you can't fix your own backyard, what credibility do you have to ask others to fix, theirs?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish that thought, Aaron.
Yeah, and I mean, I just really think, and it was a great point about the media, and I don't talk about you, but I mean, just in general, we do not have a very mature soccer media in place, and it's great that Fox is promoting the game, and ESPN and NBC and all the usual suspects, but you really don't see much pressure put on any of our American kind of leadership. It's almost like, in a weird way, the way other countries' businesses want to go into China and just not say anything and just try to, glom some of the, economic pie. We're kind of treated that way from a soccer pie. No one wants to rock the boat because they all just want to magically come in and think that there's this underlying great base of business. I would argue you don't get a great soccer culture here until you get some maturity behind it, where people care enough about, what's going on, and who's running what.
Aaron,
and especially,
Sorry. I mean, you're right. It's a great point. I got to run. I got to get another Jersey guy on. I appreciate the call, Aaron.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
There goes Aaron in Jersey. Let's talk to Mark Fishion, who's on the line. What's up, Mark?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Go ahead. You ready for the season?
There's a season starting? Yes, I'm very ready for the season. Very excited. I want to offer, I guess, it was a fascinating call that you just had.
Mm-hmm.
Really great, extremely cynical, somewhat negative, somewhat depressing, and that's okay. But, the notion of having the CONCACAF Champions League bend to the will of MLS so we can win is, I think, a little bit of a reach.
I'm with you. But that's the thing, though. Who's got the cart? Who's got the horse? And how are things going to be driven in this part of the world? Because sort of as Aaron was talking, and certainly as part of that, the assumed part of that conversation is so much of what CONCACAF is going to be is built on the notion that there are two markets to be exploited, right? To the full. Right. And it's the United States and Mexico, and to a lesser extent Canada, but we know that Canada gets lumped in with us. Those two countries are going to, even if they don't have the power in CONCACAF, certainly the people who are running the confederation know that if we don't bend to the will, or bend to the schedule, or bend to an advantage for one or the other or both, we're not getting as much money out of these competitions as we possibly can. There's a reason the Gold Cup happens here every year. I mean, every time out. And that's not changing.
Of course. I think the question is, obviously it's one of scheduling dates, right? Do we start this tournament in a date at a time that's advantageous for MLS clubs or not? I mean, that's really the key issue. I don't know how early the four MLS participants, how much earlier they were able to start training. But if I'm Garber, I'm pushing those teams as soon after Jan 1 as possible to get them into camp and have them scrimmage each other in order to get them ready to play. I mean, this is yet another year of underperforming in this competition. And I don't know, is anybody surprised that two draws at home and 2 losses on the road, given the fact that these teams really came together 6 weeks ago? I mean, there should be no surprises for anybody in the results that we've seen. No,
especially not based on the historical performance of MLS. And I mean, you speak to something I've been railing about for a couple of weeks. I mean, especially since the first leg last week, Mark, and that's whether or not MLS really does give its teams or push its teams in the right direction when it comes to this competition. Again, to me, everything short of, hey, here's $10 million across your roster to spend to compete, or here's a schedule that lines up with this competition, is a half measure when it comes to this thing. It's MLS doing what they always do, which is wanting to have their cake and eat it too.
Well, goodness gracious, damn them for wanting to have their cake.
But Mark, it's again, I think the league suffers by perception every time they make a big deal out of the CONCACAF Champions League and then their teams fall flat. And I don't necessarily blame the teams because, again, the schedule is not lined up. Okay, maybe you don't advocate for an MLS schedule switch just because of the Champions League, but certainly if you're going to make a big deal out of it, and you know that that's a significant disadvantage, then you're just setting yourself up to look bad. And the same thing goes with the spending. If you know you're at a significant deficit, especially involving depth against the Mexican clubs, you're setting yourself up for failure if you're not willing to actually compete with them. I don't know. I don't know, Mark. It's disingenuous to me. It just feels disingenuous.
All right. Well, I mean, you can argue with all the gam and all the tam that there are steps being taken in the right direction. If the
it would help if I could understand those steps, Mark. If I could understand what was actually happening. By the way, I did not make a big deal out of this when I should have. The most MLS trade of all time went down late last week. And
yes, it was GAM for TAM.
It was one of the AMs for the other AM. It was TAM for GAM, and it was like, what are we doing?
And fans were furious. No, I wanted more TAM.
I don't understand. I mean, You know, the only way.
If the players union hadn't been able to, basically didn't surrender, there would have an opportunity to have a little bit more, a little bit higher of a salary cap and a little bit lower of these gams and tabs. It's a brilliant solution for MLS owners who are able to flow more money into their organizations without actually having to pay a whole lot of people a whole lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. But again, I would like to get away from the cynicism and the negative feeling for a minute and just talk about the notion of, quote unquote, the comment that Aaron made, we won't have a real soccer culture until. There is a very vibrant and real soccer culture in this country. And yes, there are a million different things that you can criticize. And I think a lot of the grousing and grumbling and even more than that, railing against Jurgen Klinsmann in the last 12 months has really seen a bit of emergence of true soccer culture, the kind, frankly, which Klinsmann has been advocating for so long.
Well, I think that this is Mark, and you know this. You've been around for a long time. Maybe Klinsmann is only learning it. I know he's lived in the U.S. for 20 years. I don't know how closely he was paying attention, but certainly, as look, we get locked into our particular channels, right? Our particular lanes. We get locked into our soccer cultural lanes in this country. The soccer culture in the United States is as unmonolithic as any soccer culture in the world. And that makes it hard for us. I mean, it's like trying to look in 30 different places at once. You can't do it. So we get lost and don't necessarily, when Aaron says it, I don't necessarily blame him for saying it, but clearly what we have instead of not a real soccer culture is a real soccer culture in 30 different versions that we don't have the ability to throw all together and actually move in the same direction. That's it, right?
I don't know if I would call it 30, but I mean, when the national team plays, obviously people come and pull together, whether it's league versus league, whether it's youth versus adult, whether it's development academy versus pay for play. I mean, I agree with you that there is a very, very fragmented support in this country, except during big international tournaments when you put on the new ugly crest and the new ugly shirt and you cheer for your team.
But you're kind of pointing to you're kind of going in with my point here. What you just said is except for big international tournaments, then you point to the United States. Meanwhile, there's a vibrant American soccer culture that is rooting for Mexico, and there's a vibrant American soccer culture that's rooting for El Salvador and the Gold Cup. I mean, and you can't even lump all of that into, that's Spanish American soccer culture, because it's not even that. There's 7 different areas that's different from each other, where they're not even connected and homogeneous. I mean, that's what I'm saying is we can say there's an English language soccer culture that can be somewhat accounted for in a big international tournament situation when most of us are rooting for the United States. But you and I both know people who grew up here, have played soccer here, are American as apple pie, who choose instead to root for Germany. Where do they fall?
Out of many, one is our motto. So this doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, I know. I'm not arguing with you, Mark. I just, sometimes I think that I don't know. Sometimes I think a lot of things, Mark.
Nevertheless, very excited for Sunday. It should be great.
There you go.
Opening day is always terrific, and unblemished records and high expectations. This is what it's all about. Very excited.
Mark Vishkin from Seeing Red, the award-winning, I don't know if you actually won an award, but it should, the award-winning podcast covering the New York Red Bulls. Mark, appreciate the call, man.
Be well, sir.
Yeah, Mark. Always good to talk to Mark. I felt like I was arguing with Mark, and I feel bad about that. I wasn't trying to argue with Mark. I am simply trying to make sure in my own ridiculously forceful way that we are aware, as no matter who you are, that we as soccer fans, full stop, in the most general sense, are aware that under that umbrella are so many different stripes that, again, if we're connected, I mean, if you're an MLS fan and a Premier League fan, that's fine. You're connected. Those things are connected. There's a bridge between them. But there's a lot of different lanes here that aren't connected. There's no cross streets sometimes, and we therefore forget that those other lanes exist. All right. And then we don't account for them when we talk about soccer culture, and then we're leaving people out. And that's not just about, like, it's not right to leave people out. It's also about how we move forward and whether or not those, who's the stakeholder. I don't know. It's a whole thing. Okay, I'm not lecturing here. All right, let's wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning. Thank you very much to Jonathan Tannewald, my man, showing up and talking Union and TV and the like. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Soccer Morning right here on backheel.com. Thank you, producer Trevor. Oh, and Friday, the MLS season prediction extravaganza returns. Do we have a name for that? I forget. About 30 different people, or however many we can fit into the show, will give us their MLS predictions. Be there. We'll be here tomorrow, then be there on Friday. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.